Ryan Anderson is CEO of Bravas. It started off last year as a 15-company national roll-up of custom integrators serving the national market. And we wanted to go a bit more into the company and what's soon to be celebrating, the first year milestone of Bravas. So Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So Ryan, before we talk about, some of the latest news with the company, including a recent acquisition and basically how things are going during the current industry climate. Let's just go back to last year, and if we can, just kind of get us a little bit more of that behind the scenes in terms of how Bravas came to be, really.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. One of the things when people say about last year, we closed last year, but it actually started in 2015. So Bravas actually has formed a long time before, because one of the things that we wanted to do was get it right and get everyone reporting the same and in alignment before we actually threw our car keys on the table. Mm-hmm. But our industry is chock full of passion. And, everyone who's a business owner has some passion about the industry or what we do in some sense, but they're not all passionate about business and metrics and KPIs. And so what the merger did was allow us to give those owners a stage where they could go focus on their passion and go focus on what they're good at and what they love while we handle the business on the back end.
Okay. And so first of all, who was behind the decision making? And then also in terms of, trying to approach certain companies, I'm sure you had some sort of checklist of criteria that you wanted to go through. So let's talk about just in terms of how you approached the companies that you did approach and what that was like.
So Paul and Steve have a company called Vital Management, and set up business practices and
Paul
metrics.
Starkey and Steve First.
Paul Starkey and Steve First, yep, with Vital Management. And so they had set that up. And so the formation of Bravas, step one, the criteria, companies weeded themselves out because one of the first things you had to do was get your accounting platform and procedures to line up with the system in order to have proper revenue recognition. Mm-hmm. And if an owner couldn't do that, then they really had no chance of getting further along with the system, because it takes a certain amount of ownership and control to master alignment.
Okay. And then so these were all Vital Management dealers?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes. And so of all of the successful Vital Management dealers, so obviously you weren't going to sell your company if you were going to get a multiple of profit and you weren't profitable. So the more profitable dealers were the ones that wanted to sell. So we inherently had the successful dealers, and then to be able to get their system in place and to be able to show alignment, it was a natural selection process of getting those companies put together.
Okay, and were there any particular markets that you were looking at, and were there any guys that you approached that were like, you know what, I've got my own operation going pretty well now. It's not like the timing's not right to do something else with it, who might have just said no thanks?
Yeah, there were a number of companies that, there were companies that followed the Vital Management system, were healthy companies, but weren't interested in selling. And that's totally respectable because it's a very personal decision. And then there are companies that, loved everything, but VIA scared them away, and seeing what happened there, and so those were very limited in numbers. But, overall, the companies that were successful and believed in the process naturally believed in Bravas and naturally wanted to be a part of that. And there's a lot of cultural alignment when everybody is following these KPIs and talking to each other about, once we started to share the KPIs and the metrics of Vital Management and how we're doing with each other, and we showed each other our numbers, all the egos went away, and it was just, hey, you're really good at this metric. How are you doing that? What are you doing? And everybody wanted to learn from each other, and it became abundantly clear everybody in that room was really good at least something.
So in terms of what Vital Management had put on the table with its business software, just real quick, what are some of the things, what are some of those metrics that it looks at? What do guys who have basically been a part of Bravas on the business side, what are some of those key things that they really had to get ahead of just in terms of, being a part of vital management in the first place?
Our industry, because we've never had standard metrics to compare, how many employees do you have is a common metric. And, I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody in an industry event where we have matching revenues and somebody has 3 times the employee count that I do. And, it's very confusing to try and learn. So labor revenue per tech is just a very simple metric. How much labor are you billing versus how many technician hours are you on your payroll? Cash management is a big one. There are so many companies that are upside down and they don't even know it because, they've got $250,000 in the bank, but they're holding $350,000 of customer money. And they don't realize it because no one's actually put all of the metrics in place to show what product you own versus owned by somebody else, and it's showing delivered or it's showing in your warehouse. So the cash management and labor revenue per tech, the productivity, are 2 huge ones.
Now, in terms of what the sales pitch then was to the companies, who did that come from? What were some of the other executives in terms of behind the scenes who were going through all that? And then, when you went to a company, how did that whole process go in terms of saying like, well, here's what we have going on. Here are some of the names that we have coming in to be part of this. What was that sales pitch like?
So it actually wasn't a sales pitch at all. It was, hey, these are the companies that actually qualify because they're profitable, they're doing things right. Their KPIs and their metrics are in a good place. And then, who wants in? And then it was up to us as a group to really develop a culture. And like I said, the culture came very natural because everybody who wanted in brought something to the table.
Okay, so let's go into that a bit more in terms of, bringing, like you said, everyone bringing things to the table. You're talking about getting a bunch of companies to come together. This isn't just, like 1 or 2 that are combining forces, but this is, over a dozen companies. So, when did that whole process start? I know you said the company was announced last year, but it had been in the works for several years. When did that whole process start? What were some of the things that you guys prioritized for implementation kind of across the board, as opposed to things that were more phased in?
So we were all about revenue recognition and getting the financial aspects in place, because where we were headed with this was private equity investment. And doesn't mean we were all about, profit and everything else was secondary, but we had to all count the same. We had to all recognize revenue the same, and we had to all be as profitable. One of the things that we learned from seeing other failures is just because you've got a balance sheet or a QuickBooks report that shows that you're in good shape, it might not actually be the truth. Again, if you've got $4 million in the bank, good for you, until I find out that you owe 4.5 million, right? So it was really all about making sure that we're counting the same, auditing our books. We actually went through 2 quality of earnings. We did a voluntary quality of earnings amongst the group before we went to private equity, who did their own quality of earnings. Because it was important for us that if there were any skeletons in the closet, any issues, that those came to light.
And what is that? If you could just describe that a little bit more, quality of earnings, what is that process?
Basically going through your books and making sure that everything, all of the numbers true out to what they say they are, they balance out.
Okay.
Going through and making sure that things properly add up. In QuickBooks, I could right now put in a journal entry for $500,000 and it would show $500,000 straight to my bottom line if I did it right. Well, quality of earnings is going to go back in and say, why did you do that journal of entry? What's it tie out to? What's it part of an event?
Okay, so really scrutinizing all the finances.
You're right. Yep.
And did everyone have to get on the same program? Was everyone using QuickBooks already, or was that how does that work? And kind of at large with some of the business processes that you guys have done, what has that been looking like in terms of aligning every best practices and things like that?
So QuickBooks is the key component of our business because all of our KPIs and metrics are pulled from it. And our dashboards all are reporting from QuickBooks. But what we've learned is whether you're using D Tools or iPoint or Microsoft Excel, all of those have to end up in QuickBooks. And so as long as they're reporting to QuickBooks correctly, how you're designing a system is not as important as long as that system ends up in QuickBooks correctly. Okay. And then we're able to that's how we were able to consolidate financials. And so we were actually reporting our financials. Now, albeit we were just reporting them to ourselves, but we were reporting financials as one company long before the merger.
Oh, wow. With everyone together on the same page.
That's right. We had a fractional CFO that would actually take all of our QuickBooks files and consolidate them into one file.
Okay, so that was a huge first step that it sounds like needed to get done almost as the first domino before anything else could really be tackled.
Yeah, that's right, because nobody's interested in taking a meeting if you don't have your book straight.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in terms of, just looking through or looking for skeletons or looking for all that stuff, just looking through financials, I mean, that's the kind of thing that can get very messy. I mean, granted, these companies were already in with the whole vital management processes and dashboard, but did you find some surprises or anything out of whack when you started looking at all that?
When we went through everything, if we had found any surprises, they wouldn't be on the list today. I can tell you that. So, what we would find would be more innocent errors, where you just had a bookkeeper that didn't know better. But yeah, if we had found something significant, we would have obviously said, sorry, you can't move forward with us.
So either way, that's getting you some pretty good insights into the companies that are all going to be part of a larger company to begin with.
Yeah, and learning the strengths and weaknesses of the admins and the bookkeepers of the group, right? And then obviously, if we did find something, hey, this $500,000 journal entry that went straight to your bottom line is not right. Well, if they went from making $1 million last year to $500,000 last year after that adjustment, they might not be interested in selling anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So you got
to answer a lot of questions along the way. It sounds like you got to really answer any questions that came up. Kind of right there.
And we did have that situation where once somebody got their books accurate, they weren't near as profitable as they thought, and then it was hey, you now know your homework to go work on. And we're going to continue to move forward to make this group. And if in some cases, somebody got it fixed and got on the bus, and in some cases they just kind of trailed off. And once again, it's, do you want to do the work to get it right?
So you had companies that had bought into the whole thing and decided once they got started that it wasn't for them, or it was just certain issues that they had to kind of individually fix here and there.
So there was an event that occurred January 3rd of 2018, which was the opt-in agreement. And the opt-in agreement is when we all as a group signed and said, we're doing this together. And it was a commitment that if we found a private equity firm, you weren't going to back out. And so everything that I'm talking about kind of figuring these things out and, getting on the process all occurred before the opt-in agreement.
Okay. And so Ryan, you were doing this as well from from the perspective of one of the joining integrators, correct?
Yes, correct.
And just tell us a little bit about just the background of your own company and what some of the things that you guys were finding along the way that this whole process just, helped your own business out aside from the overall whole of Bravas.
So I was the owner of Elevated Electronics, and the system is very enlightening, and it's enlightening in two ways. One is you might see things that you had no idea impacted your business, but once you started to pay attention to them, you saw the domino effect. And then there was another where you might have thought you were doing pretty good until you saw what someone else was doing, and then you talk to them about what they're doing, and you go, "Oh wow, I didn't think of that." Um, JJ Orion in Minnesota is a great example of really, really well run, efficient company, and they've got a guy that at 7 a.m. takes a box van and has keys to the van, goes to every employee's house and loads their van for the day. So the employee actually gets in their van, goes to the job site, and doesn't have to drive to the warehouse and load up and then get a work order and then roll to the job site. Well, that's a pretty big efficiency when you break down every single day and the number of technicians and the number of jobs. And Jay Vandermeide, who was in charge of that operation, is our COO for Bravas, not shockingly.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of those efficiencies then in terms of going through some of the operational things before we start talking a little bit more maybe about some of the products and technologies that have been looked at in the last, couple of years. But in terms of some of those operational efficiencies, what can you give me some examples of some of the things that you learned, like you were just saying, that you learned about your own company, and some of the examples that of a thing or two that that your company had been doing really well that you guys brought to the table?
So I wasn't the only one, but our company did 2-channel really well, and we've always had a belief. There's a 2-channel world where you've got the guy who is into 2-channel and he finds you, and we always had the belief that we already had the customer with a high net worth, and we introduced him to 2-channel. Your 5th guest bedroom that no one has stayed in 6 years. Why not turn that into a listening room? And it became a really, really cool add-on. Other ones are lighting fixtures. In Baltimore, that company has an electrical division, and they've been specing light fixtures. So they brought that to the table. But I'll to sidetrack your question. It's kind of everybody wants to know, well, what are the efficiencies that you're doing? What are the things that you're doing? And it's not like we have some secret sauce where, Snap AV ships us a product that no one else has or knows about. And, it's $10 versus
Right.
$500 for the truth is.
But clearly there are steps that, like, being the guy who goes through and loads up the van so that, it's something that an idea that didn't just, generate out of nowhere and now could be used from, one company to 15 others.
Yeah. And those are ideas that, each one of them is a tiny little percentage, and they all add up to major dollars at the end. But the real success of Bravas, the real love and passion around Bravas, is the idea that an owner wears 26 hats in order to run a business. And, he only has to actually wear 14 of them, and he only likes 6 of them. Right. So I have yet to meet an owner that loves to renegotiate van insurance every year, and loves dealing with healthcare and enrollment and 401k management and sick leave, and so it's the HR department that we put together that says, hey, this is going to take care of all of that for you, and takes that off your plate. It's the insurance. Okay. It's all of those things so that you can go, instead of being a business owner with wearing 26 hats, you just wear the 14 you're good at, and you specialize, and you have extra time. We've taken distractions and time away from you so that you can go sell more, run more jobs, install more, which is why you got into this business in the first
Right.
place.
So Ryan, what are some of those other hats then, if you will, in terms of things that basically are from more of a a global Bravas environment on down, as opposed to things that were taken out of the individual company hands that Bravas is
So,
doing for them.
so HR is huge, legal. I found that one of the biggest obstacles for companies to do service plans is the SLA that they have to put together. And that, service agreement between you and the customer is a legally binding contract, and it
Mhm.
takes a lot of effort and time. So something like that, where somebody would be like, well, I can go sell a service plan. It's just all of the detail behind it that you have to get right, whether it's alarms and monitoring. So a lot of it is the HR and the legal, but it's also things like marketing, managing your Facebook page, managing your website, taking that, you have to entertain 6 different webinars on search engine optimization, and to learn which one makes sense so that you can then start negotiating a contract. It's all just a big distraction.
So is that
What
all
you really want,
streamlined in terms of the social aspect as well?
yeah. So we've got a marketing department that runs that, and our Michael Buckner in Atlanta loves to blog, loves to write blogs, loves to post blogs, wants to participate in it. Great, he does it. And if it's something that applies to all of us, we grab it. But in Kansas City, let me tell you, messing with my website was never a hobby of mine. It was a distraction. And so one of the first things that I was excited to punt was managing a Facebook page or an
Sure.
Instagram page. I wanted no part of that. And so now you don't have to, but you still can if you want to. And if your content is relevant, the marketing team will take that and push that to all locations.
Okay. So
Instead of an
basically
email that says,
they'll work with you as much as you want to work with them to have some sort of influence on it, but really it's off your hands. And basically someone who would be more of a marketing expert gets to work that angle.
that's right.
Okay.
And by the way, we have someone who's passionate about HR, loves dealing with employees and issues. And I didn't know that person existed, but we found one, and we only had to find one, and now nobody has to deal with it.
And in terms of communications between all the companies, is that something where are there like standing weekly meetings or monthly meetings, or is it just kind of things go one-on-one to talk about issues? Like how does that work if one of the companies has something they'd like to bring up with the rest of the companies?
So each location has a general manager, and the general managers all meet together twice a week, and
Okay.
discuss what's going on and exchanging ideas. And then there's the operating partners call, which is something unique to Bravas, which is anybody who owns shares. So if you were one of the owners of your company and you were a sales guy, or you were one of the owners and you're the ops guy, but you're not the general manager, no matter what your role is, if you own shares in Bravas and you are an active employee and can make a difference, there's a special call for those people that we also show more financial information and how the company's doing and what the levers are. But for normal routines, the operations team has a call with all the ops managers. The admins have a call with all the other admins, and they're led by whoever their department is, design and
Okay.
engineering. And
So those are
so,
those 2 weekly meetings?
no,
Or
so the 2 weekly meetings are just for the GMs.
Oh, okay.
So the
Okay.
GMs meet twice a month, and the operating partners meet twice a month, and then the ops team has their cadence. The design and engineering team has their cadence. The sales team has their cadence, and then with COVID-19, one of the things we put together was a rapid response team, and that was literally people who were authorized to take immediate action and get things done. And all the GMs were invited to that call, and they basically, this is what's going on in our area, and we need masks. Okay, great. Who else needs masks? And then we're able to do that. Hey, we need more, hand sanitizer. Hey, by the way, Home Depot actually sells a bleach water combination for wiping things down. Don't use hand sanitizer for that. Best practices. A customer asked us for this. Bam, somebody creates that document and sends it to all the branches that afternoon. So that rapid response team was put together as the COVID news was moving so fast and so rapid. We had that call literally every other day, first thing of the
Okay.
day.
Yeah. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit more, just in terms of, during this whole crisis, I imagine communications have been ramped up. So what's going on with everyone else. And then in terms of, the financial aspect of it, the sales aspect of it, have you guys done anything more in terms of, we're seeing all sorts of trainings go online, different sort of webinars, things like that. What have the discussions been like?
So, one of the people on the rapid response call was our director of vendor relations. And so, there were a lot of rumors flying around. Well, I heard Samsung shutting down. I heard that all the ports in LA are shutting down. And so even if the manufacturers have product, they can't get to the United States. And so we actually had someone who would be in charge of calling those ports and discussing what's happening, and then, giving that information the next day on the rapid response call. And so you had a combination of, legal responsibilities and safety practices and information that was needed to be doing things. And, how do we define whether you're an essential employee? Remember that came out, and, so putting the documentation together that according to your state laws defines it, and giving you the proper paperwork for your van. All of that was part of that team.
In terms of just business, we'll call it pre-coronavirus, but in terms of getting all the great minds together, and the sharing of best practices, in terms of on the technology side of it, obviously guys have different success selling different things. Like you were saying, you guys with the lighting fixtures and things like that. How is that working in terms of companies sharing like the different aspects of, say someone is really good in this technology area and they want to let others in the group learn more about it. How has that gone, if in terms of guys learning from another, saying, oh, you need to be doing this product, or you need to be installing this technology? Have the companies been sharing a lot in that respect?
Sharing a ton. You can imagine that that if we were to put together a committee to decide, best practices on a pair of 2-channel speakers, the debates would go on forever, and you would never get any decisions, because it's a passion item. So maybe that's something where if somebody is the number one dealer of brand X in the country, you just let them sell that, right? We're fine if they're selling something a little different because they're super successful at it. Something like networking, you can't have every location use a different router and a different protocol for setting up that router and be able to manage a global network situation. So that's where we would really get involved in, okay, let's look at the committees. First of all, let's get on the design and engineering call and talk about, which locations are probably the most proficient for that. And there's a lot of honesty there, right? I mean, there can be a big difference between a person who likes to speak and a person who actually has the knowledge and can be helpful. And so it's up to the person leading that design and engineering call to vet out that committee of what's going on. And, we did a lot of surveys early on. What products do you use? What products have you used? Why'd you stop using it? Where are you at with it? And, simply put, if everybody in the room says, I like brand X, and somebody says, I hate brand X, I had nothing but problems with it, I'm brand Y, you got to almost think that maybe it wasn't brand X that was the problem. Maybe your technician, maybe your protocol, or maybe you just were selling a product that had an issue with it that the rest of the group doesn't sell. So
Right.
there has to be a certain amount of trust that if everybody else in the group is not having problems and you were, that maybe it wasn't the product. And so that collective intelligence is so valuable in terms of getting to the right answer and the right data.
Does that go for in terms of like whole categories? Like, for CE Pro, we've done a lot with like water leak detection over the last year, and you can see the companies that are going to CEDIA Expo to exhibit. Have you been able to find, some new areas for your own company, or bring something like lighting fixtures to other companies and show them how they've helped your bottom line?
Yeah, sure. So, the lighting fixtures are a big one. Quite frankly, when you put even very well-run companies together, even though somebody might be selling shades, they might not be selling shades on every job. They might be doing shade jobs when they need to because they've been brought in, but they aren't comfortable necessarily bringing it up in every conversation. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is just getting better and being more prepared and having more tools and resources and getting more comfortable at what our core business is. It's less about gimmicky little black boxes that somebody found that could be translated into special cases.
Has Bravas done anything in terms of the sales and demonstration process, or even outfitting showrooms where, you've given other guys kind of a script to follow, or just said, hey, here are 10 points that we use in every demonstration that we do, or showroom tour? Is that what have you been seeing? What have you been seeing and hearing in terms of any of those conversations?
So there are no scripted demos, because that would imply that either one company had the perfect script or one script writer had the best script for 46 different salespeople and an infinite amount of customer personalities. And we don't want to take the salesperson's personality out of the equation, because these are high net worth individuals. This isn't a telemarketing campaign. In sales, listening is more important than telling. And that's tough to script, and it's tough to scale. So our marketing department's been churning out some phenomenal content and provides good leadership and collaboration on unified messaging. Nigel, our CMO, has built an incredible solutions guide, something I didn't even know existed. And his experience as CMO of AMD has provided some major horsepower across all our departments.
So what are some of those examples of things? And what did you say? Is it guidelines?
A solutions guide.
So how does that work? Is that kind of like take-home literature for customers?
No, it is a very massive major book that talks about every single thing you do as a company and the why on every single product, and how it all fits into one major ecosystem and is broken down into disseminated information for customers. You could say, power as a category, and then talk about all things that power affect and how it all fits into one ecosystem, instead of saying, now I'm going to tell you about surge protection. Now I'm going to tell you about power filtration. Now I'm going to tell you about, these products. You can globally talk about categories. And it was really awesome to have someone from outside the industry learn about all of our product and then break it down into, okay, these are things the customer sees, these are things the customer touches, and talking about, how the visual impact for the customer, these are all the things you're going to see, and categorizing those and grouping those together, and how important is C versus how important is here, and then how to put budgets together based on that and those values, instead of trying to decide whether your bid should be line itemed or broken down by room.
So still a pretty good chunk of, pretty good tips and advice for guys to use. So not necessarily like a showroom tour script, but really a lot of good guidelines that they can go and kind of talk the talk, or speak in, the language that won't go over customers' heads and things like that.
Yeah, if something is really well organized for the salesperson, and then you give them the freedom to talk from their heart, we're in a passion industry, and that passion translates well.
Yeah. So you had mentioned Nigel coming from outside the industry to hear a bit more about this. Can you tell me a little bit more about the makeup of the leadership team of Bravas, And then what you'd say are some of the anything key or memorable that you've heard in terms of feedback so far to the leadership that you've been able to kind of shift or implement or adjust accordingly?
So the interesting thing on the leadership is that this was originally thought of as an exit strategy. When Vital Management put Bravas together, it was that in our industry there's no way to exit the business. There's no way to retire. There's no way to leave. And if everybody got together and did this, then there would actually be a way to walk away from the business and monetize your value, as opposed to trying to sell to an employee that may or may not be able to run it in a way that
Yeah.
would get you paid. And I was not interested in Bravas or the exit strategy whatsoever, because I truly love the industry, and the idea of exiting had no value to me. And even if you wrote me a dream check for my company, I'd still want to work there. So I actually presented some ideas on how this could be a reinvestment strategy and a growth strategy, and where this thing could go. And we had and so that was adopted by the group. And when we said, okay, well, let's pick who would run the future company, they had a vote behind my back, and I was elected as CEO. So I was told it was unanimous, but it was behind my back. So I
Congratulations,
didn't
you're
know.
in
Yeah, so
charge.
I got the phone call, missed the meeting. I got the phone call that
Yeah.
I had been chosen for CEO. And so the biggest advantage that we had with aligning 15 business owners and 15 egos is I started as CEO January 1st of 2018 officially, and was elected, in November of 17. But for the entire year and 8 months of putting the deal together to finish, I was the CEO of that group. And what that did is it allowed us to work out the kinks, the development. It wasn't that somebody woke up one morning and they went from owner to employee, and that transition was difficult. We actually had the advantage of having a year and 3/4 to get used to that and merge towards that and adopt that.
Yeah. Since the official launch, and now that you've had essentially about a year in terms of being an official entity, what are some of the biggest lessons that you guys have learned so far in tackling this endeavor?
I don't know if you categorize it as a lesson, but communication. I mean, when you sell your company, someone else takes over, and it leaves a void of information that you're starved for more of. And it doesn't matter how well you communicate. There's going to be things that the corporate team does or that others do that you're not in control of anymore. And it leaves a little bit of a void. And it's totally natural feeling when you're letting go of something. And the first time you see that HR handled it better than you would have, or the customer ended up in a better place, you relax significantly. And so that kind of, works itself out. But it's odd to not be in charge of something and let it go. From the positive perspective, it's very clearly the scheduling of ownership responsibilities that no one likes doing. That like I talked before, negotiating van insurance, things like that. And the business is built on relationships, and it's the employees that hold those, not the corporate team. So that's really, really important. One of the things, and I give a lot of credit to Randy Stearns, who was the CEO of VIA. He wrote me a letter when I took over as CEO of Bravas, and we were going after this long before we closed and found the private equity firm. And the letter was super helpful. I was honored that he reached out to me and wanted to share with me the good, bad, and the ugly of VIA. And one of the things that he shared was your average employee is not near as comfortable with change as your average entrepreneur. And so you put 15 entrepreneurs in a room and decide on all these changes, even if it's the color of the floor mats in the showroom or the new logo on a shirt. It may be a small change to you, but it's a big change to them. And they lost a lot of employees on that. So we we adopted the do no harm philosophy. And step one is don't break the business. Step two is don't mess up the business. And step three is what can we do to make the business better?
Right.
And then corporate initiatives come after that. So it's the employee retention is monstrous for us, which is one of the reasons why our benefits package is ridiculous. And when we do acquisitions and they go, they're very concerned about the benefits. We hear, "Holy cow! I thought ours was good, but this is one of those moments." So we want to make our employees in such a sticky situation that they couldn't imagine leaving.
Right. So you've had to do that twice now, pretty recently. Then between opening up in Austin and then just recently with residential systems in Colorado, the Denver area. Maybe you could just tell us briefly a little bit about how those companies were targeted to join Bravas, and then what that onboarding situation has been like.
Yeah, so Austin was actually built as a test case before we even launched Bravas to vet out the difficulty level of starting from ground zero. It was obviously a success, but more importantly, it gave us a comparative benchmark regarding entering new markets, of buying versus creating new relationships. Denver is the exact blueprint of what we want in an acquisition. They have an outstanding reputation, extremely talented ownership in Travis, great relationships, and a very good and positive culture across the organization. They're also very profitable and successful, obviously. And another unique component to our rubric is how their competition respects them and speaks so highly of them. If you go around the Denver market, every one of them sings the praises of RSI and Travis, all their competition does. And this is really important to us in a unique situation, because as I want to grow in Denver, build that market, we want to acquire a lot more companies in Denver as well. And, having everyone look up to Travis, know Travis, respect Travis and their reputation, they're going to be the anchor for the culture for all the other acquisitions we do in Denver. And so it's extraordinarily important for us that I don't buy a company that no one else gets along with.
Right. So finally, Ryan, then in terms of where this thing could go, having already added a couple of locations, what do you look at as a measurement of success and the ceiling for where Bravas could be headed in terms of how many markets do you guys look to go in?
There isn't a ceiling. And, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're not interested. We're not Verizon. My goal is not slide 23 on a management presentation is very pretty because of all of the boxes we have checked for cities. Leaving those fruits on the tree to grow are just fine with me. It's really important to me that when we get into a market, we actually become the most dominant force in that market and put together, the best possible brand, the best possible product. At the end of the day, I haven't met a dealer yet that says he doesn't care about his customers and isn't passionate about his customers and his employees. Those are the two things that are so unanimous. And so, it's really, really important to us that we grow by adding the right people and the right fit. And that's easier done in a single market than it is just by trying to grab as many companies as you can in different markets. So if you think about not only the number of markets we could go into, but the number of companies we can buy per market, even the notion of a ceiling is foreign to me.
Great. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of excitement and big things to look forward to ahead for Bravas. So Ryan, thanks again for joining us, and we appreciate looking forward to more that the company has to offer in the coming years.
All right. Thank you so much.